All right, so I'm gonna start us off here. Moderate this. Uh, so we have. I'm Brent Lambert. I'm with Fire. I manage the social media, so most of the tweets are from me. But I do get a lot of assistance from Lakeisha Lewis, who is also on this little panel here. So we have Lakeisha Lewis. She is our I could run through the list of things, but she's our art director. She manages the website. She manages the merch. She, Lord, if there's something that, if we don't have a specific title for it, Lakeisha does it. So that's pretty much,
if it's not story selection, that's me.
Yeah, everything else is Lakeisha pretty much. She is our guru, and she is also the author of A Ruin of Shadows, an amazing little novella about a woman who was pissed off with the world, and she handles shit and gets it done. All right. Else we also have here, we have Ebony Dunbar. She is our managing editor, recently promoted to that position. So congratulations, Ebony. Um, Fabulous writer. She also has an upcoming novella called Stone and Steel. So look out for that. And last but not least, we have Danny Lore. They are one of our acquiring editors. And also, they write for Marvel. Like, regardless of that, like, I should have started with that actually. Yeah, so check that out. Ironheart, Riri Williams. So what a fantastic character to start a Marvel career with, right? Also has some other comics, Queen of Dreams, which I actually have and I've read. Great stuff. Um, and am I missing anything, Danny? I know there's probably James Bond. James Bond. How did I forget James Bond? Yeah. So yeah, there's that too. And I think, yeah, anything I missed, Danny?
Not from me.
Not from you. Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure. All right, so I spaced out and I thought I introduced everybody. I didn't. I'm sorry. So I actually, Devon Sanders, our editor, like how the heck I forget that, is also here as well. He has a novella out as well called She Who Hears All Whispers. Pretty dope story about, a woman. It's kind of timely in a lot of ways, actually. It's about a woman kind of confronting the horrors of a fantastical, like almost medical system in a way. So yeah, you gotta check that out as well. And he also has a self-pub series. You want to tell us the title of that one, Devon? Or?
Oh yeah, the World Breach series. It's at a very long midpoint here now for about 4+ years, and it'll be done someday. And that's all I'll say about that.
All right, all right. Well, good. We'll roll with it. All right. So, as the moderator here, what we're gonna kind of talk about today, I always try to kind of keep it conversational and just kind of like have fun and just times right now are kind of crazy. So we're gonna talk about that today in terms of like how like black writers navigate these times of social upheaval. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time something like this has happened to our community. Hope it's the last time, but it's always difficult being a writer trying to navigate that space. So I just kind of, we're kind of going to talk about that today and just like some of the challenges, some of the things that we would offer you guys. Any black writer out there kind of struggling with how to get through these times, whether you're writing short stories or novels, just kind of offering some perspective and maybe some of our own thoughts and feelings on it. So yeah, let's just get right to it. So just because like it's not really often asked of individual black writers how they're doing in this time frame, it's always talked about in terms of a group. How are you guys doing? But we don't ever get to ask each other individually. Let's just start off with that. Like, how are you personally handling this intense social upheaval that we're seeing right now? And I guess since I ended with Devon, I'll start with Devon.
All right. Yeah, that's a heavy way to start. I think there is so much going on right now, and the challenge for me, for those of you who don't know, my wife and I have 5-year-old twins at home. So that's a huge part of just our thought process and navigating everything that's going on, how we're communicating to them and simultaneously trying to teach them. We're fortunate we're in a space that they are not starting kindergarten, even though that's fast approaching here in a few months. So we're in a space of, what does that look like on a school level? Is it safe? What are our homeschool options? So that is the immediate challenge and probably the biggest priority right now as we navigate all this. A lot of my friends have been having conversations about when is appropriate or not appropriate to have that school age the talk, right, with your kids and how young. And my wife and I have been having a lot of conversation about that. So how that kind of like translates over into being a writer in these times, it's a particular challenge, I think, in that so many things blur together. Like I'm in a space where I'm fortunate to work from home in that capacity, and I find that we are all responsibilities are blurring together. I think most of us have been on a Zoom call at some point where a pet or a child or something has popped up on the screen, and
Nope.
a year ago that would have been not at all, right, Danny? A year ago that would have been just like the height of not being professional, but these days it's just more water under the bridge. So in regards to dealing with it, man, it's a lot of sleepless nights. I think there's a lot of insomnia, a lot of trying to stay off social media and trying to not drown in the madness and everything else that's going on. But at the same time, building in buffers so that work can be done, because as chaotic as all this is, particularly for us as Black folks, a double helping as Black creators, trying to make some sense and figure out pre-established goals during this madness. It's the main thing for me has been trying to find boundaries. It's like, when does work stop? When do my children get space? And then somewhere in all that madness, between family and trying to maintain a home and all the other pieces that we're doing, squeezing out a little space to write. For an introvert in a family of 3 extroverts, that's a challenge. I cannot lie. But yeah, I think mainly it's just taking things day by day and ultimately trying to give back as much as we can. I feel like we have particularly for the magazine, hopefully we'll talk about later on, but we're in a kind of pivotal position, and I'm excited about our growth and what we can do for the overall community. And with that, I've been talking forever, so I'll just stop with that.
No, not forever at all. No. I think it's important to hear about. I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't have that particular struggle right now in terms of like trying to help navigate with that. But no, I think it's important that people get to hear that perspective. So yeah, thank you for starting off with that. It's pretty important. So I'm gonna transition to one of these single folks that don't have kids. Let me. How about we go to you, Ebony? How are you feeling right now in terms of everything that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a lot. I don't have children, thank God, because again, seeing all my colleagues trying to figure out managing children and doing their day jobs and all the other things going on is very difficult. I think the thing is that we have been through this experience before of like, people unfortunately being murdered by police and like folks starting to try and protest or try and do something to make a difference, and it feels like we keep ending up in the same spot. And I think it's odd that COVID-19 somehow has made people more sensitive, I think, in a lot of ways. Like there is a way that grieving the loss of being outside has made people more aware of other people's humanities, I think. I don't know, maybe it's just me reading into that, because I feel like I'm very sensitive suddenly. Like I think there's a way that you get used to being sort of numb and knowing move forward. That's all I can do is try and do better. And I think this experience has been much more emotional, at least for me, and feeling like as much as I want to stay away from the news, I'm constantly looking at it. I feel like I'm always trying to like, okay, where can I donate? What can I do next? What else is there for me to do? And also the way that it feels like writing is the least useful thing to do at this moment, even though I think there are ways writing is just as important as protesting, or just as important as a lot of different things you can do, but it feels like, well, what are a few words going to do? So why spend the time? Why bother? I still do a little bit sometimes, occasionally, but it does feel like, what's the usefulness of this right at this moment? Sorry to be on the down spiral.
No,
but.
I mean it's factual, right? It's and I think you can't really run away from those emotions, right? You got to keep it real. You got to keep it honest. So I think that's important. Well, we're gonna keep the honest train going. Danny, how are you feeling in regards to like
You
all
said the
this
honest
social
train. I was planning on lying. Now I gotta be like honest. No, but this has been like a very interesting experience for me, particularly because of where it hits in terms of my own personal career as a writer. Literally kind of the week before New York shut down was like, I had my first panel where I was at the panel at the Strand. I had a short story come out like in like a book, you know, as opposed to like a magazine submission. And at the same time, you know, middle of several kind of like what would be not necessarily big as in like numbers, but big as in like opening the door conversations that were very much like kind of abruptly shaken by quarantine and then by everything that's going on. And that kind of has its own anxiety and depression in addition to what's going on, you know, like that kind of mid feeling of what happens if this year stopped the momentum, you know, like, and that's kind of something that I struggle with every day, because then, you know, on top of that, you know, like you get that, but it's already difficult to write. And then being like, you know, it's a real thing. Like across comics, like creators have talked about it a lot in particular, where like one week, you know, like everyone will be super busy. And then like the next week, everyone's getting calls that, you know, like, oh, the project you've been working on for 6 months is no longer happening. And then the next week they're like, okay, well, it's on technically, but it's doing this other thing, you know, like, and that's a lot when you can't really go outside because some foolish people don't wear masks and hover in front of the bodega like fools.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it's been a real rough time, like really swinging from like ultra motivated and having a bunch on my plate to like say 48 hours later, like not having anything to having things again. And I think more so than anything, it's really like the back and forth. I'm fortunate in that my wife is in a career that like, not only can she easily work from home, but like it is in a field where one of the rare like, oh, her job is pretty secure right now sort of things. So
Mm-hmm.
like that's nice, but you know, like I lost my day job, you know, like during this you know, that sort of thing. And that kind of just like it shakes, you know, the day to day, you know, and not to mention just the little irritants like, you know, my wife is working from home and we have a 1-bedroom apartment. So what do we do if both of our meetings overlap by 30 minutes, you know, navigating that, because I may be in a different room, but there's no room where you can't hear me. There's probably not a borough you can't hear me, but that's a different thing. But, you know, it's a lot of juggling and a lot of kind of refiguring out who I am as a writer, especially as we watch people, you know, get called out by their name on a daily basis, and forces you to really kind of like reevaluate who you are and who you want to associate with and what you want to label yourself as, you know. But at the same time, that kind of has this kind of double-edged positivity to it, because like I'm not gonna lie, like the past couple of weeks when things have been real bad, I like started to get real bold and just been like, well, you know, I have this person's email and I see them talking online about, you know, supporting people, so I'm going to email them right now, you know, and see how long it takes them to get back to me, you know, like see how much I can kind of flip that into, you know, opportunities.
Right, and I think that's just part of like how crazy and confusing this has all been. And I know Lakeisha, I'm sure you can probably speak to some of this. Like opportunities have like shown up, but it's still like times are just crazy. So I guess just to end with you, like how are you doing in regards to all of this?
I'm all right. Busy, just busy. It is a double-edged sword though, because like I always tell people, I'm a selfish writer. Like I don't write, because I want the younger me to have had, the worlds that I create when I was younger, and I don't write for representation or anything like that. I do it because I want to. I create because I need to. I put my people on my back with the other work that I do with Fiyah and all that stuff. But it's a very difficult time right now to be selfish, which means it's a very difficult time to write. So what I have ended up doing is picking up a bunch of extra projects with the magazine and things that are not writing. It keeps me busy. I'm productive, at least, and I'm able to, turn some of these things into opportunities for other people. But that's about all I can do. I can't do the dull, depressed kind of moments, because I feel like in everything I do, it ends up ultimately being activism anyway, because I'm Black and because I'm a woman, whatever else. But if I can take on as many projects as I do, because what's sleep?
Right, what's sleep? That's so. I think that's like a consistent.
It's the Ebony stays on me about not sleeping, but
yeah.
I mean, how else is any of this gonna get done?
Someone's got to remind you to go to bed, drink some water.
And I don't listen. I do what I want.
No, you do not listen. Not at all.
Y'all are not the boss of me.
Well, I mean, I guess that you bring up a good point though, in terms of like, feel like we got to kind of like this activism, this work that we do. It is in its own way activism, and we hear so much from like Black writers. I think all of us, whether it's in like the Twitter DMs or personally or whatever, we hear from like Black writers. I think some of the things that they're going through right now, and so that kind of leads me to my next question. Like, what are some of the challenges that Black SFF writers are facing right now that you would want white and non-Black readers and writers to kind of understand that they may not be thinking about? So I guess I'll change up the order this time. I'm gonna start with Danny on that one.
I think the thing that's most important for me is really that I need white people who are talking about supporting Black writers to, not out loud, not on the timeline, not to their Black friends, stop and really think about what not only they want to do, but what they're capable of doing to support people. I think that there's a lot of people who are talking the talk now about helping people, reaching out, mentoring, etc., but they haven't really considered whether they have the skill set to do it. And I think that can be incredibly harmful to someone who is in a situation where they need that kind of support. And especially since like we're really fortunate that we have, the magazine community, to kind of check up with. But there's a lot of people who follow these, white agents and editors and other people, and they're only just coming in. So they're going to jump at the chance to get this support, but they don't have anybody to tell them whether with like experiences, whether this person really knows what they're about, not in terms of knowing the business, but in knowing how to be an ally. And I think that white allies have to really think about whether they're qualified to be the person giving that 10-page critique on a Black story, whether they know enough. Like if you are an agent who's saying that they're open to Black writers approaching them, but you already don't have anybody Black like that you've ever picked up, have you thought about why you're not picking up the Black queries? have you been honest with yourself about that? Because say you do still make the decision to try to help people, you got to be aware of where your blind spots are and not put that labor on the Black people and not put that disappointment on people. You know, like you can be saying, oh, I'm opening my inbox to people, but if you're still going to reject because you don't get our voices or you don't get the, you know, like our nuances, then like what help have you been?
Absolutely. No, that's a point I didn't even think about. Like, are you actually qualified to give this to give these critiques and give this advice? Well, I guess in terms of advice, Lakeisha, you recently put up a blog post in regards to querying for Black writers. So I guess I just would go to you next. Like, what challenges do you think that the white and non-Black audience need to understand are facing Black SFF writers right now?
That none of this is new to us, as quickly as they've burnt out in a couple of weeks of protests or of offering services on Twitter or whatever. This has been generations, daily stuff that is just in us, and then having it put on this platform for everybody else to wake themselves up. It's extremely exhausting just to observe. So like I kept putting out those tweets about, you know, making sure that the offers of opportunities and things that you're giving to Black writers right now, make sure that it extends to a point where we can actually handle it. Like Fiyah's gotten an outpouring of support. Like this past week has been wild, like on our back end, in terms of people wanting to work with us. You know, where were y'all last year? You know, when in between the murders last year, you know, when we actually had some energy, we were doing the same things then that we're doing now, but, you know, why is it you're just now seeing us? So it's one of those things where you can't help but kind of look a gift horse in the mouth. Like, yes, I appreciate the opportunities that, you know, you're presenting me with right now. What's the motivation for this? What am I supposed to be taking? Are you going to get tired of listening to my Black ass problems, you know, during this offer of mentorship that you put forth, you know, in a traumatic moment? It's hard to trust some things, and it's one of those things where, you know, patience, compassion is required, and I hope that that's at least acknowledged. Or what is any of this for?
Facts. Yeah. Ebony, I can't even really say anything to that, so I'm just gonna let you come in, Ebony. How are you feeling in regards to, like, what challenges do you think that this non-Black and white audience needs to understand in terms of what Black SFF writers are facing?
Yeah, I think adding to what both Danny and Elle said, you know, where will you be next year around this time? Like, where will you be in 6 months? Because for most of people, this exact moment is not the moment where they can produce. I think, as we already said, this is not the exact moment where they feel like, I'm going to work on that query letter and get it up to snuff, and I'm going to send it over, and it's going to be great. It's just not, it probably won't happen. So are you still going to be looking for Black voices in 6 months? Are you still going to be looking for Black voices in a year? Are you going to do the work to actually be ready to receive them? As Danny said, I think that's a huge challenge, is that you're not ready for this 5 minutes, but you're ready all the time. If you're ready, you don't have to, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? Like, that's the thing.
Right.
And that's the most important thing.
Right.
I think the other challenge that I think is coming up is just that there is so much that I think Black people are expected to take on at this moment, that unless you are somebody like Elle who needs to be busy in order to process and move forward, right? Not everybody can take on 7 new projects in 24 hours. Like, this is just hard. And even if you want to be helpful, even if you think like reaching out is supportive or whatever that is, it may not be what somebody needs, because they're just overwhelmed with everything that's happening, and also feeling like, am I missing my shot because I can't do the thing I want to do, right? Like, this could be the opportunity where I could get an agent, but I can't do anything. I cannot move forward. I think that's a real challenge that people need to keep in mind, and that's why thinking about future steps is important, because maybe in 6 months I'll be ready for you, but will you still want me then?
Right.
Put a reminder in your phone, agents, that you offered this up. And so when you get like 100, Black queries in 6 months, your phone tells you that you told them that this was going to happen. And, they finally got a chance to do that, revision or finish that last chapter. And like, tweet again in 6 months. That reminder that I'm open.
Right. I mean, we have a whole thread on it, so we're gonna hold them to account. I'll just drop the thread again at some point at the direction of our fearless leader Devon. So we will hold them accountable.
Drop Devon. I'm sorry.
No, Devon, not the. Well, I guess we could. Well, I just caught that. My bad. yeah, we could do that. Devon, right? But actually, you know what? Since I just brought him up, let's just get his thoughts on it. Devon, what would you say are some of the challenges that this white audience and non-Black audience isn't necessarily thinking about in terms of this moment right now with Black SFF writers?
I think everybody's spoken to it so eloquently. I would just reiterate that this is really a time for extreme grace with the people who are finding the space to sub to you under this very special circumstance query. It is certainly not the time for a form reject in response to anything that's been sent out. And I think just understanding to Ebony's point earlier about this, is this my shot? And then hopefully I would hope that people are offering these opportunities can understand what a mind fuck that is. And sorry if we're not cussing on this, but it's out there, to have this moment be the thing that tipped everything off, whether it's this was the final straw of violence against Black bodies, plus COVID was the thing that made it happen. But it's like this is what it took to get the structural change that we've been railing about for years, and that is a challenging thing to navigate and to process as you're going forward and trying to advance your career under extreme duress. So I would hope that people putting out calls for open submissions and everything else that we've been seeing, while grateful for that, just continue to be mindful of the folks and everything that they're dealing with in a mental state.
To what Devon was saying about kind of like the sensitivity of the moment, also especially if you're dealing with younger writers or newer writers, in moments like this, it's very easy for someone to be like, well, did I only get picked because you need to prove that you're not a racist? Did I only get picked because they're desperate? And you have to remember that will legitimately be the mindset that even some of the people that you offer representation or you offer contracts to, or you open, your internet or literal doors to right now, where lots of writers are real sensitive about a lot of things, but especially about that imposter syndrome and why they're in the room, and tying getting an opportunity to a tragedy like this, like that's a real psychological thing, that there will be people that have to deal with that.
No, that's a good point. Because there's a lot that comes with these offers and these, suggestions to help. Like, it's like, what's the authenticity of it? So I think y'all have all really spoken to some of the concerns that Black SFF writers would really have right now. So I guess just kind of evolving right out of that, like, what would you tell a struggling Black SFF writer right now, like, how to navigate this situation in terms of being creative? Like, how would you tell them to navigate it? I guess switching the order again. Let's start off with Ebony this time.
Ooh, I think the thing I would say is just to give yourself grace, right? Like think about what you would say to somebody else in your situation, because I think we're all 1,000% nicer to other people than we are to ourselves. So I would say whatever you would say to somebody else who's also struggling, who you know is going through this experience, whatever that is, say that to you. And whatever advice you would give to them, take that for yourself. That might mean you're not writing anything right now, and that's okay. Maybe your brain needs to be editing because that doesn't require you to write as many new words or feel like you have to meet a certain word count goal or whatever it is. Maybe you can truly do nothing, and that's also okay. Make notes of the people you want to follow up with when you're ready and able, so you know who's there and who made an offer. Take Brent's thread and screenshot it, do whatever you have to do, but
Screenshot
don't feel like you have to act on anything right this second, because I think the other thing is that if you act right now, you may not be giving your best self, and you don't want to do that to you. You don't want to have your mind being messed up thinking about like, oh, that wasn't even the best letter I could have written, that this novel isn't even in the best place, but I feel like I have to get it out. I think for me, I would rather you say, I'm going to take a nap and drink some water and eat some food and then come back to it when you're ready, than to put out something you're not happy with and that you'll end up beating yourself up over long term.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Like, don't rush. Time's not going anywhere. So Devon, since you are actually the head of the magazine, you see a lot of stories. So, what would just be your advice to Black writers right now who are kind of struggling to create in this moment?
So many different things. To not get too granular, I'd say the first piece is really defining what your self-care needs to be in this moment of time, because it may not have been what has served you in moments past. As a personal example, I can attest to something that's given me some peace and a space to focus or listen to podcasts. Is this little garden that I have, this podunk garden with that I take close-ups of anything that's growing out there. But it's something that's given me kind of an alternate focus to all of the chaos that's going around, and really served as a grounding space. Granted that not everybody's in the space or doesn't have the the will or the anything to do with that outside, but finding what that is for you, whether it's something that you've been doing or that you want to do to ramp up, I would recommend that. Whether it's taking your time on Animal Crossing or whatever that is, find something that you can use as kind of a central anchor as you're building out how you're dealing with all this chaos. I think I'm a person that believes in routine and order, whatever that looks like for you. So wrapping as much of your daily, eat, sleep, if it helps you to get up and just shower in the morning, if that's what gets you going. If versus like with all of us on these Zoom calls where you just I've been wearing the same outfit for 2 weeks. It's like try not to have those different things if it helps. It's like those things are things that are helpful for me. So I think with all that, when all this hit, I had to go back and reassess what is going to work for me, because I thought that I could take my old routines and then just carry those forward, that I just have all this a bunch more time at my disposal, and that wasn't true, because I needed time to find a way that I was going to conscientiously be a part of the movement in this time. I needed time to redefine my relationship with the kids and family as we deal with all this as a unit. So for Black writers, yeah, I guess the underlying thing is take time for yourself, and really be honest with yourself about what you need, and don't feel guilty about it. There are people out there in my community that are doing amazing things right now. I see my wife on these local organizing calls, and I'm just like, why am I over here writing this story about, you know, whatever, about talking trees, right? And it's it can be you can feel some kind of way about that, but I still believe that what we're doing and the move that we're putting forward in our industry is worthy of our time, in addition to everything that he's done in this moment. So keep pushing forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great message. I saw you mention Animal Crossing, so that made me think of Lakeisha, who I know is using Animal Crossing right now. So I'm gonna have her go next.
Wanted to give her an inroad.
Yeah, it was an easy inroad. So
yeah, dude, like play Animal Crossing. I don't know. It's at this point it's kind of mind numbing. I've gotten all the DIYs I possibly can and up to date on all my new fish and bugs. So from there it's just baking. Just you have to if you can't write, do something else or do nothing. I think these guys covered it perfectly. Just find something to fill that space, and subconsciously it will recharge something in you creatively. It's not something that you have to, you know, create a mission in order to, okay, I'm going to relax for X amount of time and that's going to recharge my battery at, like, you know, 10%, maybe I'll be able to get some words down. This is kind of one of those times where you kind of reassess your relationship with your creative work. Do you use it as sort of a panacea? You know, is it something that is it something that fulfills you, or is it work? If it's work, take a break. It shouldn't be work. But yeah, reassess your relationship with you know, your creations, whatever they are. I know, like, we'll have illustrators, artists, people who create in other ways, probably watching this, but take a look at that and then do the thing that lets you heal. If it is create. If it's something else, you don't owe it to anybody else to, you know, do it. That's it.
No, that's a great answer. Sometimes you just need to reassess and take the time to kind of breathe and, you know, find something else to do. And since we're all friends here, I know we are all kind of doing other things. Like Danny, I know you have the little Gundam things that you were painting and whatnot. So I think you could probably speak to finding something else to do right now.
I mean, it's super helpful, like finding a hobby that is off your screen. Because one of the things that happened to me a lot since quarantine is realizing I've really strained my eyes, a combination of trying to work and trying to keep up with things, you know, anxiety, you know, like scanning the internet, you know, and that plus, you know, usually my hobbies are like, you know, video games and stuff. So then by the end of the day, I'm literally in pain. You know, I'm in my glasses and like my vision's blurry. So like Gundams for me, not only are they just like fun, but it's specifically a hobby that I don't have any screens in front of me when I'm working on it. So that was like super important to me. Also kind of as a practical application of what everyone else was saying, Black writers, it's okay to ask for that extension you need. Literally, when you hear me say this right now, open your email and ask for that extension that you think that because you're a Black writer, you're not allowed to ask for. One, almost every editor will just be like, it's no problem. I went through this the past week. I had like some personal stuff going on, and I have a couple of really, you know, like, you know, kind of blessed opportunities, and I was really scared to just say, look, you're not going to get it from me this week. I can't function, you know, and I just had to, you know, take that moment and go, hey, I need to give it to you next week. And especially right now, most editors are going to understand. So like, if you need it, just be upfront the moment that you can, because the earlier you ask for it, the more likely they're going to be able to say yes. And then kind of very different from that, just with all these opportunities cropping up, you don't have to change your voice to quickly impress these white people who are opening their doors to you. I know that trying to come up with something that will easily get you through the door in that quick timeline feels like it's the right idea. But if that's how you start your career, or if that's how you further your career, you're not going to be happy with how it starts, because you're going to feel like you have to keep doing that. So like, don't try to be like, well, I got to get out something I got to put out a Black trauma story when I hate doing that because I know that'll put me on the top of the pile. Or say, you don't write Black joy stories. You know, you don't have to try to do one that feels empty to you, you know, like if that's not where your heart is. You want to take these opportunities as yourself, not as some stand-in for a Black writer. So like, don't do that to yourself. You're only going to cause yourself pain.
So that's great advice. I mean, it kind of, I feel like it kind of feeds into the next question I was going to ask, but sort of. So I know we hear a lot about like people struggling creatively right now, obviously for good reason. But I wanted to ask, like, what about people on the flip side, like people who right now in this moment have energy and who are thriving creatively and who are able to get work done and they're Black? I think sometimes there's a little bit of guilt associated with that. So I just wanted to get your opinions on what you would tell Black creatives who feel like they do have this energy and they do feel like a surge of creativity in this moment. So, Lakeisha, you always working, you always got energy. So I'm starting with you.
Why do y'all keep putting me on the spot like that? It's okay to be productive. What are you supposed to do? There's no one who can tell you how to handle this moment. There is nothing anyone can say is inappropriate or an inappropriate reaction. So if your thing is to double or triple down and work, as long as you're not doing your own head, and do it. And if anybody's got a problem, tell them to come see me.
Hey, and she'll handle it. She will handle the problem. Well, no, most definitely. So I'm actually gonna go to Devon next because you mentioned something in your last answer about like, you know, feeling like I'm writing over here about talking trees and people out here organizing. So like, what would you tell that writer who is feeling that surge of energy and they banging out 10,000 words about talking trees? Like, what would you tell them about how to use that creativity in this moment?
Just go do it. Like exactly like with what I said. If you're in a space and you have that creativity, please create, because at the end of the day, your stories are still needed. That perspective still has to be out there, and we want to hear what you got to say. So submit, query everything that you need to do. Like take advantage of this space, because who knows when the next thing is going to come up, because it is going to come up. And it's the flip side, and you're having to gear down for whatever reason, right? So yeah, if that guilt is there, process it, but ultimately, like, keep pushing forward.
And I think, I mean, I feel like Danny, you kind of like answered this in the last one too, but I just wanted to give you a chance if you had anything like additional to throw into that, like what you would say to a Black SFF writer right now who's just feeling like they're on all cylinders firing.
You have nothing to feel guilty for. The pain of this moment and the confusion of this moment is not the fault of Black creators, both in terms of on a governmental level, on a social level, on a level of what's happening in publishing. You, whether or not you're producing, or if you're producing a lot, like I get the feeling of, you know, like this happens to me when, you know, I'm producing work, but like I have friends who are writers and they're not able to do it right now. And you then don't want to speak about it because like you don't want them to feel a type of way. But on the flip side, you do that work, you put it out there, someone will read it, put it down, and pick up a pen. You know, like, so you just got to remember that like a story that you don't put out there doesn't have a chance to inspire anybody else. But if you work to put it out there, even if, you know, like you feel guilty or whatever, there's someone out there who probably needed that story. Even if it's only the person who read it in slush, you know, like you've made a difference by just trying to get it out there.
Yeah, no, that's wow. That was such a good perspective. I need to write that down somewhere. Yeah, it's so true. Like if you don't know who you would inspire until you actually put it out there. So I think that's great advice. And Ebony, you're kind of having something sort of like that right now because you're doing promo for the novella. So what would be your advice for, you know, a Black creator that feels like they are just on fire right now? So the pun intended, I guess.
I mean, first and foremost, if you have something that you feel like is particularly joyful, you should send it to Fiyah, because we are open for submissions right now until the end of June. Send us your joy stories, everybody. But I think also, yeah, to Danny's point, your joy might actually inspire someone else's, right? Like there is something about seeing people around you win that, like, there are some ways that could make people feel like, well, why aren't I also doing things? But there are other people for whom that will be the inspiration they need or the kick in the butt to be like, you know what? Yeah, I am joyful too, or I am able to get some work done, or maybe I can do X or Y, or I should reach out to that person and make them my accountability partner so that I actually do something because that's what I want to do. And so both like share that you're feeling that way. So there will be people who don't take it well, and there will be people who do. Do send your work out if you can send your work out. And I think the other thing I would say is if you have the creative energy, just use it but be careful not to burn yourself out as well. Don't use it to the point that you have nothing left. But definitely be writing, be editing, be querying, be submitting. Because these things come in cycles. So there will be a moment where you head down and you need to use this energy while you can.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think all of y'all really covered the spectrum of like what someone with creative energy should be doing. And I think it's great. A lot of people will probably benefit from that because I do think sometimes the vibe is when things are tough, you should be just automatically struggling, and some people aren't. So it's good to hear, you know, your advice across the board here. So I'm gonna ask y'all for more advice. So for in this time, you guys are all writers, experienced, successful. So what would you say would be good creative writing habits that Black SFF writers should try and either work on or just develop in this moment? Who I want to start with this time? I'm actually going to start with Danny. Yeah.
If you figure out those healthy habits, please tell me. It'd be much appreciated. So one of the things that I work on a lot is finding the mode of outlining that works for you. And I feel like this is a good time to do it because you can really sit and like piece them apart. Pick them apart, piece them apart. I can speak. But in terms of what really works for you, if you're finding yourself with, time to read, sitting there and outlining your favorite books, or going in and re-outlining your drafts. Very often the way that I figure out what needs to be edited in a story is by doing that. And I think that is a skill, not necessarily that we're not taught, but schools teach that there's only one way of outlining. And that way of outlining may be useful for outlines that you're going to hand to a bunch of people or for like academic purposes, but I don't necessarily think that those methods are useful to writers all the time, that it doesn't really reflect what we need to see on the page. And I feel like, especially when like getting the nuances and emotion and dialogue might not be something that you're emotionally able to do right now, especially if you're doing, sci-fi fantasy, you're doing these intense scenes, you're doing this big emotional stuff, and you're like, there's enough in the world that's going to make me emotional. I can't really work on that scene right now. So working on the technical structure of stuff by like, kind of bumping up how you outline and how you think about stories overall is helpful for me.
No, that's awesome. Actually, the outlining your favorite book thing, yeah, I think that's a method I've seen multiple writers mention. So yeah, that's probably a very good thing to do right now in quarantine, where you kind of just sitting around with time. So I guess I'm gonna go with Ebony next, because you just have a novella out there in the world. So I know you kind of just went through this
which everybody should get when it comes out.
So absolutely.
I think the thing I would say is look for your community and use them effectively. Like, one of the only reasons I'm continuing to write right now is because I have a writing group that meets every Wednesday, and then we spend like an hour together, and I just like, even though we're on Zoom, I still feel that like, ooh, do they know I'm looking at Twitter and not putting words in this document? Maybe I should get off of Twitter. And that having that accountability and somebody to just like get who understands what it's like to be trying to write when the world is on fire is really helpful. And I think that's also helpful, like if you have Twitter community or whatever it is, to figure out how to use them to be effective in your own creative work, which might mean sitting down and writing together, but it could also mean just like checking in once a week to say, what did you get done? What do you have to get done? How are we doing? Do you need more support? Do you need less support? I think that's a big thing that's helped me to continue to get work done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Community is huge. Like, that's such a big anchor for me. I mean, all you guys are part of that community for me. So yeah, that's super important to have that and kind of anchor you down. So I am going to actually turn to Devon on this. So Devon, what writing habits do you think would be a good idea to develop or just improve upon right now for a Black SFF writer?
Sure. I think knowing yourself, and I'm going to try and say this in a way that hopefully makes sense. Knowing yourself through different phases of your work, right? Like there is how I'm moving through the world when I'm brainstorming versus when I'm drafting versus plotting, getting revisions. Like there's all these different phases where we interact with our work differently. And I'm finding as I develop as a writer that I am completely different people depending on what's happening. Like I am super grouchy, like kids don't bother me when I'm doing these edits. And God forbid if it's micro edits, right? When you're just fixing all your little grammatical, ticks and everything else that you got to deal with. But if it's brainstorming, me and my daughter are coloring together. We're combining animals to make new magic and just having fun because it's something that I have the ability. It's just my brain is working on a different level, and I think being to know yourself during all those things, try and be aware of your best and your worst habits, and try and do your best to maximize the things that really work for you and then minimize what doesn't work for you. So I'll take it back to the example of editing. That's usually finally found some quiet space. It's something I need that zeroed in focus, the logged out of the Slack, like all the different things that are quote unquote distractions, right? And the other piece of that tends to go into that is this pile of snacks, like piled up on my desk. And usually, if I'm being honest about it, it's not the most healthy stuff. And it's like, cool, I just finished out a sentence. Let me knock out this bag of Doritos. Whatever. And so I think that as I as I continue to age majestically over here, really being conscientious about what I'm doing on a health level. I think Brent, I know you're not doing a lot of talking on this, but I hope you get a chance to as well, because Brent's been one of my heroes in really being intentional about working out and making that a part of the writing routine and a place where you can get ideas. And that's something that I aspire to and will one day hopefully achieve as well. The last thing I'll say is advice is make sure whatever's filling your well, fill it up. If that's binging on Netflix, if it's getting into a better reading habit, that's something I've been very intentional this year of reading historical books, reading your peers. You know, that's all the kind of standard advice you hear, and it doesn't hurt to hear it again. When you're doing your other things, there are so many podcasts out there and people that are willing to share in their knowledge. Like one that I'll shout out right now is Deadline City. When I'm out there, you know, pulling these, you know, bleep 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 worms off of the, you know, off of the various things that are growing in the garden, I'm over here getting fed on a different level too. So yeah, Deadline City. That's Danielle and Zoraida. Definitely check them out. And there's a ton that hopefully we can attach to this, just people who are putting out good work and really supporting writers, whether you're listening to their past stuff or whether they're going through this pandemic and societal upheaval right there along with us, but still like feeding the community. So engage those resources and jump out and get what you need to get supported.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll do that quick little shout out. Yes, working out is one of my like big writing things. Like it helps me unlock the brainstorm, and I usually like make most of my breakthroughs on the treadmill. So this quarantine has not been fun for me because I don't have a treadmill right now, but I'm getting by. But yes, I'm a huge advocate of like working out to help with the writing process. So last but not least, Lakeisha, I know you juggle. I'm gonna keep talking about how much you work. You juggle so many projects. So what's your advice for what habits do you think Black creatives like right now need to kind of cultivate and or develop during this time?
Everybody touched on good stuff. I'd say get used to screen independent resources. One of your 1,000 journals that you've never written in, note-taking apps. I use
2001. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
I use Google Keep to jot down, like, because I'm not going to keep my laptop with me in bed, but if I have like a drafting idea or a sentence or something that I want to make sure that I get down somewhere, I just throw it in the app, and then, you know, next time I'm at a screen, I can implement it there. But especially when it's hard to create, and then you're constantly, you know, tied to a screen for work purposes if you're working remotely. It's good to get away from that. I do have also 1,001 journals, so they're handy. I have one within arm's reach right now. It's right here.
Hey.
I also have a legal pad. I'll write on myself if I have to, but the point is, you know, if you're a creative, and the way you normally do things is not working, you have to take a step away, do other things. Snatches of inspiration are going to occur to you, and you have to find a way to get those recorded before, you know, they fly off again. So just make sure that you are not dependent on, you know, being in one location, being in your office, in order to generate anything. You can do it anywhere. People have done it for centuries. So.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. I've heard somebody, I can't remember who, to whose credit this was, but they were saying like, if you really want to like succeed as a writer, forget ritual. Like ritual does you no favors, and you can't like depend on that to like progress as a writer. So yeah, I like that you brought that up. All right, so we've been kind of talking like some heavy stuff or whatever, so I want to like finish it up. Well, I got like 2 more things, but I want to start moving into some more fun things to talk about. So what creative works have you been using? I guess this could be serious or fun, so you depend on how you answer it. But what creative works have you been using to either kind of like cope with this time or better understand it or whatever? I know for me personally, like I just rewatched Avatar: The Last Airbender. That I could not have asked for a greater escape from like this moment. So, but there's also works too I'm thinking about that I could read and like just kind of help me sit with everything that's going on too. So you guys can determine which one you rather talk about. But I'll start off with Devon this time. Yeah.
Oh man, well mine's easy because it's been Avatar too. That's been having that. It just felt like a godsend to see that, and the kids ain't seen it yet, so I was salty at them for a couple of weeks because they just burned through them without me. They just left me in the dust when we were supposed to be watching them together. So I was like, whatever, you little rascals. But yeah, that man, and I think really just trying to branch out and do new stuff, like uh, to what folks have been saying about limited screen time. I know I talked about gardening and just being outside. Like we're really intentional about getting outside. There's plenty of places where we can go. Like we know like all these different species along this riparian area that's up the street from us, and we rescued a turtle that had somehow gotten in the road. Like just all this like bizarre stuff that we're doing to appreciate the time that we have outside, even though it's hellfire in Phoenix right now. On the other side, on the creative, I think there's always ideas that trickle in, and getting a chance to work on those as they come, but also trying to just like dabble in different creative spaces. Two things that have been heavy on my heart and mind to really invest some time in have been animation, and then also something to do with music. So I've always been in a space where if I'm creating something, it's always centered around writing and building a career. And if it's I've had times in my life where I feel guilty about going to the movies because I could be editing something, and so
Right.
I'm trying to be really intentional with these other projects that I've put off forever because I'm not at the level of success that I want to be yet. So I should be writing instead. I'm really trying to make space for those because ultimately I know that they're gonna fill my tank on different levels, and in some roundabout way, contribute to the writing anyway. So yeah, just
Right.
trying to really branch out and find different things.
All right, yeah, no, that's good. Especially like finding different things to do like that. That's hugely helpful in times like this, and just it's good to hear that you're still creating, because I think a lot of us right now are struggling with that. Um, well, I'm gonna go to Ebony. She has again a novella coming out, so I don't know if she's creating right now, but if you are, can you tell us a little bit about what you're creating? Anything that's helping you cope with this time, or any creative works that already exist that you are looking to that kind of help you cope or better understand this time?
Yeah, I mean, I am trying to write. Like I said, at least once a week, I get together with my little group and we try and get some words down. So I am doing a little bit of writing, which is nice. In terms of other people's creative works, I think I just, as a human, generally turn to romance in times of discomfort. Like I want to escape the world a little bit, and that's one thing romance gets you. You always have a happy ending, and so that why not? Why wouldn't you? So like I got to read Talia Hibbert's new Take a Hint, Danny Brown, and that's really great. And I love that, like, so that novel talks about anxiety. Alicia Rye, another romance writer, recently had another novel that talks about anxiety, and that has been so helpful in terms of like being able to see somebody else deal with it and still be happy and still figure out like, how do I move forward in my life, knowing I'm an anxious person. And so that has been great for me. Oh, the other
No,
thing I'm
romance
doing
makes
is
sense. Yeah.
finally watching Steven Universe. I started it like 2 years ago, and then I've been like picking it back up, and I just started season 2, and I've been loving that a lot too.
Yeah, so that's like, I can't imagine more a perfect escape than Steven Universe. So that's a good choice. And but I mean, it's an escape, but it also deals with things too. So I think that's a pretty good choice. Same with Avatar. It's like it's dealing with some heavy stuff, but it still is like it's like a kind of like a weight off your heart a little bit. Lakeisha, I love your taste. I love all the things that you do. So go ahead and tell us, are you working on anything creatively right now, or are there any creative works that you are looking to that kind of like navigate you through this moment?
I don't know if they count as creative works, but I guess it would be considered like world building research. I watch a lot of Anthony Bourdain shows, his reruns. Rest in power, Tony. And I'm writing a mermaid thing, so a lot of planet Earth is happening. So there's that. In terms of actual creative stuff, I actually go back and reread some of my old complete things with pleasantly sort of fully realized settings and things from my first novel that did not sell, but that's okay, they'll be sorry. Where I really love that world, and it's a really sort of comforting environment. I love the characters and everything in it, so I definitely revisit my old stuff. Apart from writing, there's baking, which everyone's doing. So
yeah, everybody's baking right now. It's crazy.
But yeah, it's that's probably it. Do a lot of puzzles.
Yeah. No, I've been dealing with there's been a lot of stuff going on in regards to, well, your old stuff. I mean, like your first novel should definitely be like talked about more. Like that's
it's
criminal.
It's coming one way or the other. It's
criminal,
gonna happen.
and it needs to happen. Absolutely.
It's a threat and a
all
promise.
right, so I guess I think I covered, right? Did Ebony did I get to you on that? Or I forgot. Did I cover everybody?
Danny didn't talk.
Danny, I knew I forgot somebody. I'm sorry, Danny.
Spell golden.
So I know you have like a long laundry list of stuff to do. So what do you have going on right now?
So not exactly creative, but I've been marathoning all of BuzzFeed Unsolved. I am a person, it's hysterical. And there are few things that can make me laugh that hard right now. So I really needed it. And while I'm not I don't believe in virtually like any conspiracy, especially not like supernatural stuff or like crime stuff. I like hearing about them because then there's always like some weird leap from an actual fact that is interesting that they do, or I hear it and I go, that doesn't sound right, which causes me to actually like, do the quick 2-second research that disproves the theory, but then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna file the real fact away for like a story or something. So I like really like stuff like that. But in terms of creative stuff, I've been kind of so I am starting to edit my first manuscript. Like I got the notes on it, and one of the things I'm doing for world building is going back to all the old Gundam series that I never watched, because I have time to marathon them right now, and like just sitting there and watching through them, because I think that they tell really interesting stories about soldiers and war and being forced to be a fighter and protector, whether or not you want to be or think you're qualified. That tends to be like a big theme. And so watching those in times of resistance, I think is really interesting, especially since they almost always focus on like teen or like early 20s people who like are forced into the suit one way or the other. And I find a lot of comfort in that being a theme that is covered so often and so beautifully. It feels less isolating. And also on a really dorky thing, when I'm keeping away from the screens. So my wife's favorite writer of all time is Louis Bujold, but because I was bitter because she never listens to any like suggestions that I ever give her. She's one of those people. So I was like, this is the one thing I'm not going to do when you ask me to do it, is like read any of her books. So during quarantine, she got fed up and like started reading them out loud to me while I build Gundams. So we're literally reading right now. We started with Curse of Chalian, which I think I told Ebony about, which was a great read, but I'm just literally listening to the Verkosigan saga from the very beginning chronologically all the way through. And it's really fun, one, because I'm just listening while I'm like building Gundams, but as opposed to an audiobook, it's that I can stop and talk about the moments that I really like in the book while it's being read, you know, being like, oh, I see how that's foreshadowing, or, oh, is that referencing that thing? And it's a different sort of interaction with the book that I've been really appreciating. You know, like as an adult, how often do you have like, oh, I'm reading a story before bedtime, but like it feels nice. Like it's still a thing that feels nice when you're an adult, especially as a writer, and you know, getting to think about that kind of thing, especially like considering how long the series is and seeing how the writing evolves, has been super fun.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty enjoyable actually. I need to get back on some more audio series. So one last question for the panel before we wrap it up here. Just overall, since we're thinking about this stuff, like what would you say, how would you think that the SFF industry should react to this moment? Like how should they grow past it? And like what would you like to see them do? So I will start off with Lakeisha on this one because I know she has thoughts.
All right. The industry itself needs pretty much an overhaul. I'd start with take advantage of COVID kind of shoving in your face that that this industry can run remotely, and that it would be in the industry's best interest, health-wise, inclusivity-wise, to decentralize from areas where people of color cannot afford to live, much less work. All of these offers of mentorship that we've seen kind of crop up over the last few weeks, what happens after the mentorship? Do we still have to move to New York in order to be hireable somehow? When does that happen? With COVID and everything going on, there's really no going back to the way the system was before. So decentralized from there. You have to staff positions with people with different, I'll say, racial and ethnic backgrounds. We say marginalization a lot, but what's happened in the last few years of studies, when we look at the makeup of publishing, the only needle to move is queerness. And that's because that can possibly overlap with whiteness. So there's a lot of different ways we need to kind of frame the way we're thinking about representation in the field. And that starts with getting people of color in actual positions of power to vet stories, who can, you know, relay and sort of translate experiences that, you know, that are found in manuscripts. But you have to go to where those authors are. They can't always, well, not authors, but those people, those editors, those people who work in marketing and publicity. You have to go to where they are. They can't always, you know, you can't expect them to keep coming to you and have things change in any meaningful way. That's it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I knew you had a good answer. That's why I started off with you, because I knew we've talked about this topic before in just terms of like what representation actually looks like and how the industry should have it going forward. So I'll just move on to Danny. What are your thoughts? How do you think the industry should react to this moment and like grow out of it?
I think that one of the major ways that seem really simple to kind of improve here is the industry needs to rethink its relationship to comp titles. Like they can't just be sitting there and be like, well, we can't compare it to Get Out or Black Panther, so we can't sell it. You know, like, you know, I love them, but like there's this real thing where we talk about how many books that weren't able to get sold got sold because suddenly Black Panther was a comp title. And if people can't come up with comp titles that are, you know, the Black version of this thing that acquisitions doesn't want to look at them. And then on the flip side, a conversation I've had with several people in the, like, even editors and agents in the industry, is I think we need to look at the generational gap between acquisitions and the rest of the industry. You know, when you have Black writers who might be doing, you know, gonna pull this one out my ass, but now that I've thought it, it's amazing, you know, wanting to do Avatar meets Get Out, you know, like say something like that, or, you know, Naruto meets something, but like acquisitions don't know what the anime title is. They're so, you know, like you've got the people making the decisions whether these comp titles are useful don't actually know the generational relevance of the things that would be used in a comp title. So if you're going to continue to use them, and I'm not necessarily, I get why people think they need to be used. I'm not necessarily of the camp that thinks that comp titles should be like a priority. But if we're going to continue to use them, you have to make sure that the people that you're using comp titles to market to can recognize the common things that would be used in a comp title nowadays. Like, you know, you get agents who like are like, listen, if you're a writer and your comp is to like Harry Potter or Twilight, you know, in 2020, like you need to, you know, fix things. And I'm like, well, when it's being sold to a publishing house, have they upgraded? Do they know like the more recent media that these younger writers, or not even younger writers, you know, like that the people who are writing now are going to get, you know, do they know the references that we're going to make, you know? If my comp title is, you know, this classic, you know, white piece of literature, but, you know, remixed by Kendrick Lamar, do you have an image of what that looks like? You know, if we have to use these comp titles to sell ourselves, you have to at least make the effort to understand them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never thought about that in terms of comp titles, but you're absolutely right. Like, if there's a generational gap there, then how would they understand a lot of the things that writers today are talking about? So that's, wow, that actually was really insightful. It's something I'm going to be thinking about after this is over with. So yeah, thank you for that. Ebony, you're having a novella coming out. I'm going to keep mentioning it. So I'm sure you have thoughts in regards to
What's
like,
it called again? When does it come out?
Stone and Steel. When's it come out again, Ebony? Yeah, we might as well do the shout out for it.
September 5th. You can pre-order now on neonhemlockpress.com.
There we go. All right. So since you do have a novella coming out, how do you like? What are your thoughts on the industry and how it can react and grow out of this moment?
Yeah, I wish I had insights as great as Danny and Elle have. I don't know that I do. I think one thing that actually came up in a conversation we were having earlier, Brent, is just the way that people are able to reach out to others and make connections in a different way that feels like it's supportive both for the person doing the asking and for the person who is being asked. Like, the interesting thing about having this novella coming out is this blurb process, in which I feel like I can't ask anyone to blurb for me. I don't know anybody. Who would I ask to do such a thing? But there are probably plenty of people. I just feel like, why would I burden others with the ability to do that? And I think if there were systems in place to make that process easier, I think especially for Black writers, it's often hard not to feel like, well, I don't want to ask this person and put too much on their plate because I know how hard they're working. And they don't want to, they're like, I can't open the door to just any old buddy. I can't open my DMs to every human being who wants something from me, but I do want to support my people. Like, how could we make that happen in a way that makes sense? And then I think the other thing is just like, to these offers that are coming up, how do you systematize that? How are you saying, like, I need to make sure that my querying process, the way I'm reviewing queries shifts over the next year, that it looks entirely different, so that I'm actually talking to authors, I'm actually I don't know, giving them feedback or doing stuff that allows people to progress. Maybe that doesn't have to be representing them, but it actually helps them to be better authors in the future and get representation eventually, as opposed to just saying, I'm opening to queries from Black writers and hoping for the best. Like, I think there are other ways that we can think about that. Not to say that agents aren't extremely busy with a lot of things to do. I'm not saying that, but there's got to be some way we can shift the way that looks right now that feels less like a rat race. Yeah, I don't know what that looks like, but that's my thought.
I mean, no, it's a good thought. Like just the community building and how that, you know, is more important than the hierarchical structures that kind of exist right now, and how we do need to kind of reevaluate some of that. Last but not least, our fearless leader, Devon. What are your thoughts and feelings in regards to how the industry could react and grow out of this moment?
Yeah, I don't think I could say anything more than everybody's been said. It's all been spot on. The only two things I would add to it are don't expect Black people to do the work. Like, know that has to come from y'all, because for a lot of us, even with the inception of Fiyah, we've been working for a long time in various capacities to make this to get us where things should be. The other piece I would say is that if you're one of those people that has felt compelled over these past few weeks to, you know, make these offers and do everything else that we've seen from publishing, it is encouraging, but I would also stress to remember that it is a marathon, not a sprint, and that anything that you're attempting to do, it's like, okay, what are you doing a year from now? What are you doing 5 years from now? What are we doing to push this into a space where the representation that we're looking for is actually happening, and it's going to be a permanent thing, because that's ultimately the goal.
Yeah, no, that was a great way to wrap this up. So just once again, you know, you've seen the Fire team today. Well, some of us get the chance to talk to you today, just about, you know, just pushing forward. Navigate this moment the best way you can, just like everybody's been saying. Self-care, you know, do what you need to do to get through it, whether that's create or just chill back. So I want to thank Devon, Danny, Ebony, and Lakeisha for being willing to do this today. It's awesome to hear your thoughts on this situation. So any last parting thoughts? I'll go through each of you, and you can just kind of say anything, whether it's you want to promote something or you just have a thought that you didn't get out on a previous question. So I'll start off with Danny.
Well, first, thank you, Brent. Thanks for moderating. Also, everyone who's offered help, remember that publishing is such a long-term game that you better be signing yourself up to defend your writers, either as agent or as editor, from the people who didn't offer them help. Because you are signing them because you opened your doors, but the editors you're querying to may have never specifically opened their doors in that way. The marketing people, you know, all of those people down the line. So you got to remember, you know, it's like Devon was saying, it's a marathon, and it's going to be a marathon being an ally in this way too. And for the Black writers and creators who are listening to this, every fear and every joy that you're experiencing right now, you are not alone, not remotely. And there is a community for you.
I think that's important to hear. Like, there is community, and it is out there. You just gotta, you know, do a little work. You'll find it. It'll find you. But there is community out there. So I think that's a good thing to leave off on. Ebony, any parting thoughts for us?
I think the best thing, is just to say, look for the people who can support you through this time, but in the future as well. I think that's so important. Like, I think if I didn't have the crew to go to for those moments of like imposter syndrome or other things that come up, to be able to ask questions about the industry and what's going on, things would just be so difficult. I think just don't be shy. That's the other thing, right? Like, I think it's so hard not to feel like, oh, I'm imposing. Oh, I shouldn't say anything. Let other people tell you if they don't have the bandwidth. Don't assume they don't. And then, just my self-promo plug, Stone and Steel is out September 5th. You can get it. Neon
You have a
Hemlock.
book coming out? Why did no one tell me?
And I've read it. It's a great book. I enjoyed the story a lot. So yeah, y'all definitely want to make sure you pick that up. All right. So Devon, any parting thoughts for us?
Yeah, I just want to say again, thanks to you, Brent, for just the work that you're doing here with us, keeping the conversation flowing, and then also for building that community on Fiyah through the social media. Like I think that's one thing that's unique about what we've been able to build is like there's like truly a sense of community. And if for people, if you're starting out in the writing journey, if you feel isolated for any reason, it's a really easy way for you to just kind of like plug in and get connected to people. So I wanted to give you that big shout for the work you're doing. The last thing I'll say is related to the magazine is for the short story writers out there, please submit. The joy issue, we understand the capacity was such a challenging theme through this time, but that is not the last issue we're going to have by any means. So as future issues come out and as this magazine continues to steam along, we cannot wait to read your work.
Absolutely. What he said, we want to read your work, so send it in. Lakeisha, you are our last person. So what thoughts do you have for us on the way out?
Just a shout out to everyone who supports Fiyah and Black speculative literature in general. In the last couple of weeks, we have tripled our subscriber number, a little bit more. We're a bit under 1,500 subscribers. We have a new issue dropping for you on July 1st, and a convention coming this fall for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in speculative fiction, and some of their white allies. So you're welcome. That's it. Follow us on social media, Twitter at violetmag.com. Well, not the .com for Twitter, but the website is violetmag.com. And you can catch our studies. Brent is also our reviews editor. I don't know how he escaped without mentioning that part.
I did. I'm sorry.
He and his crack team of reviewers review pretty much anything Black people want to read. So check those out. We have a merch store. We're always selling subscriptions. Any way you can. All of your proceeds go to paying our contributors who right now deserve a lot of your money. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you again for everyone who listened to us today, talk about the industry and some writing tips. So you all appreciate it. We love you all. Definitely check out the website, check out the magazine, and just support Black science fiction. It's definitely needed right now.